Welcome everybody. This is Lessons from the Field. As you know, this is a series of interviews we do with a diverse array of guests, all of whom have a common thread, and that is a passion for pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences. And today we're very happy to be featuring Kersten Tatarelis, who is a graduate of our PharmD program from 2007. She also completed a PGY1 residency here in 2008. She's currently Vice President for Pharmacy Operations and Clinical Services for Advocate Aurora Health. And we'll be asking Dr. Tatarelis a series of questions that will elucidate her experience and advice, and that will be very valuable, I think, for those listening, our students, alumni, and friends. So if we go ahead and get started, Kersten, first of all, thanks for being here, but if you could just tell us kind of briefly what you have been doing in your career since you left UIC.
I appreciate it, and thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited to be able to talk with you all. So yeah, so I currently, as you stated, am Vice President of Pharmacy Operations and Clinical Services. Right now, my oversight at Advocate Aurora is I oversee the operations for between 3 and 5 of our Advocate Aurora hospitals. My focus is on Illinois, though I varied in oversight between hospitals in Wisconsin and Illinois. I oversee the operations for some of our mid to larger size hospitals, licensed beds between 250 and 400 bed hospitals. I have current temporary oversight as we're looking for someone to fill a position for our flagship hospital, which is Christ Medical Center, over 600 beds, as well as our children's hospitals. So right now, a little bit broader of a scope than normal. So in addition, my type of role also has some system oversight. I oversee a clinical pharmacy services team that is a remote team. They clinically evaluate and verify orders remotely. There are about 150 FTEs that work from home and service our hospitals for all 26 of the hospitals and Advocate Aurora Health. And then in addition, as indicated by my title, I oversee clinical services, and for Advocate Aurora, that includes the scope of pharmacy practice, including antimicrobial stewardship, formulary management and P&T, and then medication safety program. I also have oversight of our policies and procedures and our governance network for the pharmacy team. So that's just sort of some of that system obligation and system oversight that I have as well, in addition to core operations.
Wow, that sounds like a huge job. Yeah. You said 150 people just in the remote entry section, right? Wow.
Yeah.
How many total FTEs do you over all of the areas of responsibility? Or I guess
it just depends on the day, but right now, in excess of 300 and roll up to me. Okay. If not more than that, now that I probably just shortchanged it. But I have a huge leadership team that really up to me and manages all of that. So we've got a strong team. Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive. Well, thanks for that overview. Our students are often interested when we do these interviews and hearing more about the day-to-day responsibilities, because while that scope is so huge, what do you do on an actual day-to-day basis? So maybe you could share a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So the fun part, I think, and you'll hear me comment on this on operations, but especially this last year, the day-to-day has been really different. A lot of what I do is huddling up and meeting with my leaders and making sure that as a health system and as an inner working of several hospitals, that we're working in step, that we're making sure that we're making decisions efficiently and effectively all across our hospitals, and in coordination with other disciplines. So we do a lot of work to make sure that we're making good, safe, and effective decisions. So we have a lot of meetings generated towards that. I have a lot of medication safety work and meetings that are focused on that, being over medication safety for the health system. That takes a lot of focus. And then obviously clinical services. So I oversee a team who manages, if you think about COVID, they were at the forefront of making key clinical decisions for the health system. So it just depends, it is a lot of meetings, meeting focus, team planning, recently a lot of strategic planning. So we've had this last month, we had a great meeting last week with a lot of us all together, whiteboarding out what pharmacy is going to look like here over this next year for Advocate Aurora, because we want to make sure that we have a clear vision on where we're going.
Yeah.
And then what we do is set up work teams and plans to try to get us there. So the day-to-day, while often feels like a lot of meetings, it's anywhere from small team meetings to high executive level meetings.
Okay. It sounds interesting. I mean, Advocate Aurora only merged in when was the merger of the two organizations?
2018. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm sure it's still kind of a lot of work in progress to get two big organizations like that together, but sounds like it's going very well. So, well, thank you for that introduction. I guess the next question I wanted to ask, and maybe you could kind of step back and tell us about your different professional stops, you know, where you went after the residency and how you got to be where you are now as vice president. And then what motivated you, I guess, or made you successful in each of those that push you to the next level?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I did my residency program at UIC. Awesome year. One year I clearly look for regret for so many reasons. Following residency, I moved into a clinical pharmacist position at U of C, University of Chicago. Okay. And there I became a specialist in ICU care for a few years. I helped with a core team actually from that UIC residency program set up their residency program and set up the teaching and education programs there. A wonderful first experience as a pharmacist. Yeah. Following that, I took a position at Illinois Masonic Medical Center, which is an Advocate, at the time, an Advocate hospital in downtown Chicago. It was a level 1 trauma center, acute care hospital in the city, as a clinical coordinator. And so I stepped into an intermediate manager role at that time. I did oversee pharmacists in that position for the first time, overseeing clinical services for the hospital, as well as a few pharmacists. Shortly after that, I moved in to a role as a manager for that hospital. And within a few years was director of respiratory and pharmacy before I stepped into a system clinical director role for Advocate. Within a few years, moved into higher level leadership as we integrated between Advocate and Aurora as vice president of operations, and then more recently overseeing clinical services again.
I see. And at each of those stops, what was the driving force that kept you kind of moving up? Was there anything in particular, or?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's an interesting question. You know, I think I'm definitely, very internally motivated and persistent, but I also think one important thing, and when I think about students or residents as they're thinking about career changes or thinking forward, was that I was always thinking forward, or always thinking about that next step. Not necessarily professionally, and not necessarily because that's what I needed or wanted, but just in my day-to-day. I mean, the truth is, and I think anyone who's led me or anyone who I've led is, I often get bored easily. And so I think I work best in a change environment where, it's just a dynamic. Yeah. And so I think my ability to be nimble and kind of get excited about the opportunities that change brings versus, find it frustrating or get concerned with what change brings. I seek out the opportunities and I get excited about, what improvements change can bring. And so each time, something like a merger can be really intimidating, but if you find the opportunities within it, it can help propel you forward. So.
Well, these last few years, you must have been in heaven with all the changes going on.
There's not much. So yeah.
So over that time period, what have you been most proud about in terms of your career? Are there particular moments or things that you accomplished that you look back on and think, well, that was really had an impact, or proud to say I was involved in?
Yeah, I think my comment's a little bit broader than that. I think, when I think about where I'm at this point in my career, I often don't step back and think about it, to be honest with you. But at times like this, when someone asks you to, but I think both at work and through, some of my involvement in national organizations like ASHP or
Mhm.
others, I think I'm most proud that I've still been able to stay focused on professionally advancing both my career and, some of my national achievements while still having a growing family.
Yeah,
I have 4 kids at home, and I do feel like as a young female coming up in the profession, there's always those periods where you feel like you need to pull back. And I think for me, I was most proud in being able to, continue to accomplish and do both. I feel good about being able to balance it with my family and with work, and so I
yeah,
think that's my biggest.
yeah, definitely something to be proud of. Yeah. I mean, considering you've really only been, it's been 15 years, right? Since you finished your, well, maybe a little bit less.
Mhm.
But you've come a long way. Yeah.
Mhm.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I guess another question I wanted to ask you is, there's so many opportunities in pharmacy, but you have a responsibility for, a large number of hospitals, a lot of operation with the remote order entry. What made you interested in kind of the pharmacy operations side of thing? I know you also do the clinical side too, but maybe just more on that particular area.
Yeah, I tend to think of operations as just like the umbrella that covers everything.
Okay.
How we operate, but operations, whether that's technical operations or clinical operations, I think part of what I love about it, and my love has grown in the last few years, is really that it's just like a big messy problem day after day. And I think what pharmacists in general are really great at doing is solving problems. And I know it's one of the things I love doing, is helping to solve big problems.
Yeah.
What operations at the leadership level does for me is it really combines just that skill set that I think is naturally within pharmacists, and strategic thinking, and being able to put those two together to be presented with a problem but come forward with a solution and a path to get there. And so I think that's the most exciting part of it. And there's some opportunity for creativity in between,
Hmm.
where you get to help design, the outcome. And we just happen to be incredibly lucky in our profession to have that outcome be hopefully, improvement in patient care, and have the patient be at the focus and the purpose of what we're doing. And so I think for me, as long as I'm grounded in that purpose, and I can stay focused on that, operations is a fun puzzle to fix.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Well, you mentioned a little bit about leadership and becoming a leader. I know you're also you're going back to school to get your MBA, I think. But are there leadership skills that you wish you would have learned earlier? I guess given how successful you've been, you were maybe born with some natural leadership skills, but maybe just comment on leadership and things that you wish maybe you could picked up earlier that we could help inform our students about.
Yeah, I really reflected on this question, and I think one of the things I often think about, and I think it's part of the natural journey, but when you're immediately out of your career, you're really focused on yourself. You think about where you are, where you want to go, where your next step is, and I think for me personally, I found that your biggest strength comes from those around you. That building other people up can actually bring to you your greatest reward. And I think at this point in my career, it is critical to celebrate and raise up others. That's where your strength comes from. I find more joy in seeing the journey of others at this point in my career. I think the sooner you can get to that point, the more rewarding your entire career process can truly be. I know that I can't be good at all the things, all the things that you commented on that I'm doing. I'm not the expert in all that, but I need a strong team around me, and I'm just lucky to be able to have that. So I think the earlier you can appreciate and respect that, I think that the better you'll be long term.
Yeah, well, that's great advice, and I totally agree with you. I guess maybe while we're talking about advice, do you have any other tips that you might want to impart on our listeners, whether they're students who are, in their program now, or those just kind of finishing or trying to think what their next steps are? What kind of tips do you have for people, whether it's career or life advice?
Yeah, I think I tell our residents all the time when they're on rotation with me that I think often, when you're in school or you do residency, you sort of have this, you're sort of in this box where you think you're ready, you've got a vision and you're ready to move forward. We like to be comfortable in that space. And I think for me, one of my biggest things I've tried to do, whether it's work or life, to be honest with you, is, when a door or window cracks open, and it could be just a new opportunity of some kind, of something, a new idea, maybe even crazy feeling, take a look at it. Step through that door. Even if that space is uncomfortable, even if it's something you never thought you would be interested in, or in fact, you might not be interested in it. It's important to explore that space outside your comfort zone. You may not always go through with it, right? You may not be interested in that job opportunity or that new group of mom friends, or whatever that is, and how that plays out for you. But I found that in that exploration phase is where your greatest growth comes from, and from a professional perspective, sometimes your greatest professional satisfaction. So just always push yourself outside that comfort zone. You never know where you'll land.
Yeah, that is just fantastic advice. Yeah, sometimes you have to make yourself uncomfortable to grow. That's so true. So I guess one last question, Kersten, as we close this out. Our students and recent graduates, as they make decisions about their career, and you're such a great role model for them in terms of what you've already accomplished, but they're trying to look to the future and see, well, how can I best prepare myself for that future? What's coming in the future, and what are the ways that I can be best prepared? Do you have any advice along that lines? What you see the future of pharmacy or healthcare being, and then how our students can best prepare for that?
Yeah, I think if there's anything that this year's taught us, it's how future forward we propelled ourselves within 365 days, if nothing. So to me, there's no question that digital technology and telehealth are platforms that are here to stay with us. So I think the more and work that we're doing right now is how to intertwine pharmacy into that total patient care model, focusing on the needs of the patient wherever they are. I think that the more that we can do that, the greater success as a profession we'll have moving ahead. So this could mean, utilizing technology and automation to leverage wherever possible, so that we can focus on the patient wherever that is. That could be in the hospital in our, more traditional sense for our hospital team members, or easing them into their transition to home, or in the long-term care facility, using technology, in the broadest capacities that we have it now, and embracing that concept. I think we're going to rise up into roles that there are big gaps in right now, and that healthcare needs us in, and it's our time to really step forward into that space. I think for students, this is a really exciting time. I think the more we embrace that concept, I think this is a unique and creative space to be in as a student, if you're willing to jump in there, because truthfully, healthcare is going to be less brick and mortar in the future. I think we're all seeing that play out a little bit. And that means opening up, our minds to where that pharmacy team member, whether that's a pharmacist or a pharmacy technician, can fit in and our criticality into that space. So I think there's a lot of potential. I think this is a really exciting time to be a student, to see where that takes us in the future.
Yeah, thank you for that. The optimism for the profession in the future comes through loud and clear in what you're saying. And I do think, I agree with you 100% that there's so many opportunities in that space. So thank you so much, Kersten. This was really fun. Looking forward to seeing what, where Advocate Aurora Health goes with great leaders like you. I know we have a lot of our alums that are working in that organization at many different levels, and we're really proud of all of them, and definitely including you. So thanks for taking time to share with us and our students, and looking forward to hearing their feedback on this, and hopefully maybe connecting them with you if you're willing, if they have follow-up questions and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much.